For this, how we're going to give an illusion of some 3D motion, we're going to create a ActionScript 3.0 file in Adobe Animate. And just based on the content that we have, I am going to go to my properties and I am going to change the size of my stage so that it is a square. So I want to make sure that I uncheck this link or unlock this link. That way, when I change one, it doesn't automatically change both. I'm also going to keep my stage color white and my frames per second 24. Now, one thing I figured out that I did wrong, I did not delete the background layer from my selection. So go back and delete your background layer. Otherwise, it won't import properly. Okay? So I'm going to go to File and Import to Library. And there's two files. And you can use your Control key on your keyboard so that you can select both at the same time. Click and then Control-click your selection and text string. And you get a pop-up showing you the layer and asking what you want to do with it. We're just going to leave it here as flattened bitmap image and bring it in. Same thing with this one. Okay? Now, you don't see anything on your stage because we imported it to the library. So that's where this is now. And because it was a Photoshop file, it did bring in like the assets that go with it. Okay? But you can ignore those folders. They're not going to make anything change. So I'm going to start off by naming this layer, and I'm just going to name it Carson because that's the name of my person. And I'm going to drag him in, and obviously that's a huge image. So I'm going to zoom out some, and I'm going to use my free transform tool, hold my shift key down so I keep it in proportion. Because if I don't hold shift, look, I can make him short and squatty, or I can actually make him backwards. Okay? That's not what you want. Shift, drag from a corner, and then you can get back to show frame so that you can get him appropriately sized on here. And that looks like it's about good. Then I'm going to make a second layer. This second layer is going to be my text ring. And I'm going to go ahead and drag the text ring on, and it too is a little too big. So shift, keep it in proportion, and it's got to be resized small enough to where both the top part and the bottom part cover your selection. Okay? And actually I might, now that I see that, I might make sometimes things don't cooperate. Make him a little bit bigger, just a little bit. There we go. All right. And one more time. There we go. All right. So I feel like I have a good size for this. And actually, I probably want to select both and use my Align panel to center horizontally. That's going to put, and actually when I do that, I want to make sure that I do Align to Stage, center horizontally. And then I probably want to move, because see this scooter and his elbow out? That's really not putting him centered there. I like that better. Okay? Now, I know that I want this animation to last a certain amount of time. So I'm going to go ahead and find where frame 120 is. And I am going to, on the layer, the bottom layer, I'm going to hit F5. Just because I want him to last that many frames, that amount of time. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer for the time being so I don't accidentally move things around. Now, the ring looks like it has left. It hasn't. Remember that where our playhead is, it only shows what's there. And at the moment, frame 1 is the only place where we have something on that text ring layer. Okay? Now, what I'd like to do is I would like to transform or put a motion tween on this. So I'm going to, remember you can do it here on the image or on the keyframe. I am going to create a motion tween. By default, it just made it 24 frames. I want it to last the same amount of time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F5 just so it does. Okay, and the blue background of this layer shows me I have a motion tween. And I am going to click anywhere in this motion tween, and I'm going to make it rotate one time. You can choose whether you want it clockwise, counterclockwise, but I would say, oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. I would say clockwise, since that's the way the text goes. Okay, so that's what we're going to put it as. Okay, so now that that animation part is done, I want to lock that layer. So we've already got that done. But what we have to do is we have to make the text look like part of it's going behind the person and part of it is in front to give that illusion of 3D. And since the text is going across his face, I want this part to go behind and this part to stay here in front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom layer, which has the person in it, and I'm going to unlock it, and I'm going to drag it to the new layer icon right down here. That made a duplicate layer. And then I'm going to drag that second one up to the top. And I'm going to go ahead and lock that bottom one again just so I don't mess with it. Now, what I've done is I now have that layer in front. So now you can see that the person is covering up the text all the way. There's no text in front at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fourth layer. And I'm going to go ahead and name this fourth layer Mask. What we're going to do is a mask is different than a quick mask, different than a layer mask. What we're going to do is we need a rectangle or some kind of shape. It does not matter whether you are drawing in object drawing mode or not, okay? And it does not matter what color you have for a stroke or fill. All that matters is that you draw a shape over the area that you want the text to be in back. Okay, that's all that we're doing. So I have that shape, it's covering what it needs to, and then I'm going to right click on the layer, and I want you to realize I'm not right clicking in the frames. I'm right clicking here on the layer name, and I choose mask. Now what that does is it's saying, okay, everything that is outside of that mask, okay, and if I disable it, I'll show you. Everything outside of that mask, or outside of that shape, gets masked. So only what is inside of that shape stays there, of that layer below it. You see how it has that layer docked right there? Okay? So that's saying that this rectangle, we can see this layer because of that rectangle. Everything else on this layer is masked. It's hidden. Okay? All right, so if you didn't already, do a File, Save As, find your Animate folder in your OneDrive. This is going to be your period number, your last name, underscore 3D motion. Saves it as a .fla so that you can edit it later. And now that you've done that, you have to test it so that you can see whether it worked or not. So I'm going to do, whoops, Control Test. There it is. It publishes a Swift file, and I can see that text rotating around, and I can see that it's going behind my nephew's face and in front of him down there. So this is the file that you will upload to your Canvas ePortfolio to complete your challenge.